They shake your hand and call you brother. They raise a glass and toast your victories. They laugh at your jokes, nod when you speak, promise loyalty with the smoothest tones. But beneath the ritual and the ritualized affection, something else breathes, quiet, calculating, ancient. It doesn't hate you. It studies you. Because no man is loved for who he is. He is loved for what he provides. And when that provision dries, when your status slips, your resources fade, your usefulness weakens, the smiles falter. The messages stop. And the same voices that once praised you now grow silent. Or worse, sharp. You think you've had friends. But what you've really had are negotiations. No one says this. No one wants to. Because the illusion is warmer. Because believing in brotherhood is easier than confronting the predatory hunger that animates most human interaction. Because if you admit that no one is truly your ally, then you must also admit that you are alone. And that, for most men, is the one thing they are never ready to face. But Machiavelli saw it centuries ago, not with bitterness, but clarity. In courts and councils, alliances were masks. Friendship was currency. Loyalty was leased, not owned. And when the value of your presence expired, so did their affection. It was never personal. It was never hate. It was the natural law of power. Look closer. Think of the friend who disappeared the moment your career stumbled. The colleague who applauded you in public but maneuvered against you in private. The lover who praised your strength only to recoil when you showed weakness. Were they anomalies? Or were they simply telling you the rules of the game? The lie you've been sold, the most dangerous myth of all, is that virtue guarantees safety. That if you're good, loyal, kind, dependable, people will stay. But Machiavelli inverted that idea. He understood that goodness without strategy is weakness. That trust without caution is not noble, it is suicidal. You don't want to believe this. You want to believe that people care, that there is such a thing as pure loyalty, that someone would bleed for you without calculating the cost. But those who cling to that belief the hardest bleed the most, because the world is not a brotherhood. It is a battlefield of veiled intentions. And in this war, the most naive are always the first to fall. Machiavelli didn't write to depress you. He wrote to arm you. He knew that the man who expects loyalty is the one most easily betrayed. That love, respect, admiration, these are all nice words. But in the shadowed corners of human behavior, they are fragile currencies. And when pressure rises, when power shifts, when self-interest knocks, those words dissolve. So why does this hit so deep? Because you felt it. That moment when someone you trusted turned. When the room changed. When support evaporated. And you stood there, trying to understand what you did wrong, when the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped being useful. It feels cruel. It feels heartless. But it is not rare. It is not exceptional. It is the default setting. And once you see it, once you name it, something inside you breaks, but something else begins to wake. This is not about becoming bitter. It is about becoming precise. About understanding that true peace does not come from being liked, but from being unreadable. That survival does not come from exposure, but from control. That freedom is not the presence of loyalty, but the absence of illusion. And perhaps that's what Machiavelli was trying to teach us all along. Not how to manipulate others, but how to stop being manipulated by our own need to believe in them. Because once you see clearly, once you accept that every alliance is temporary, that every smile may be a strategy, and that no one is your friend, not truly, then for the first time in your life, you are finally free. We grow up believing that loyalty is sacred, that friendship is a bond forged in fire, tested by time, immune to change. Movies, parents, childhood promises all whisper the same refrain. True friends don't leave. Real ones stay. Stick through thick and thin. But Machiavelli knew otherwise. He saw it not in theory, but in history, where kings were murdered by their advisors, where trusted allies became traitors with the turning of the tide, where promises meant nothing once the power dynamic shifted. To Machiavelli, human nature was not noble. It was strategic. And what about today? We tell ourselves we've evolved, that we're more civil now, more enlightened. But look at your own life. How many people praise you when you're rising, but vanish when you need help? How many friendships survive when your fortune fades? How many smiles stay warm when your usefulness disappears? This isn't a glitch in the system. This is the system. Modern society hasn't erased Machiavellian dynamics. It has refined them. Now, betrayal wears a suit. Manipulation has a LinkedIn profile. Self-interest is disguised as self-care. The battlefield has shifted from castles and courts to group chats and boardrooms, but the rules remain the same. People will stand beside you, as long as standing beside you benefits them. And the moment it doesn't, they will disappear so smoothly, so silently, it will feel like your fault. Because here is the lie. We are taught that if we are good, if we are kind, generous, giving, we will be protected. But in truth, those traits are often exploited. Machiavelli warned us, the world does not reward virtue. It rewards perception, the appearance of strength, not its substance, the projection of goodness, not the pain beneath it. He wrote, "It is necessary for a prince to learn how not to be good, not because goodness is evil, but because goodness, when naive, is dangerous. Because a man who believes everyone is playing fair is the easiest to conquer." Look around. We are surrounded by curated performances, public identities engineered for approval, smiles that hide ambition, compliments laced with comparison. You are not being seen. You are being scanned, evaluated, positioned in a mental ledger of utility. And if your presence no longer profits, you are removed, not with malice, but with indifference. This is why betrayal feels so cold, because it is not fueled by hate. It is driven by irrelevance. You were needed, then you weren't. And that is all. Machiavelli never said this with cruelty. He said it with precision. He saw through the polished surface of society into the engine beneath, a machine built not on trust, but on advantage. And the most terrifying part? Most people don't even know they're doing it. They believe their loyalty is real until it costs them something. They believe their affection is genuine until your failure tarnishes their image. They convince themselves they are still your friend, even as they retreat the moment your value declines. Their self-deception is part of the mask. So where does that leave you? Alone? Maybe, but also awake. Because once the mask falls, something powerful happens. You stop asking for loyalty. You stop expecting fairness. You stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer you a bandage. And in that silence, in that terrifying but sacred clarity, you begin to shift. You become unreadable, not bitter, not closed off, just opaque, strategic, present but private, kind but calculating, capable of connection but no longer enslaved by it. This is what Machiavelli offered, not despair, but armor. He didn't teach you to hate people. He taught you to understand them, to see beyond the surface, to recognize that behind every kind word may lie a calculation, that behind every alliance may hide an agenda, and that your freedom begins the moment you stop pretending otherwise. You don't know the world your heart. You don't know strangers your secrets. And you don't owe friends blind trust. What you owe is awareness. Because in a world built on perception, the man who sees through illusion cannot be controlled. So what do you do when you realize you've built your entire emotional worldview on a system that was never built to protect you? The first reaction is denial. You replay the moments that felt real. The jokes, the shared silence, the time he drove an hour to help you move. It couldn't all have been strategic. Surely not every bond was built on utility. But then the pattern starts to emerge, not in the good times, but in the withdrawals. The silences that followed your lowest points. The sudden coldness after you said no. The unspoken rule you never noticed. You are only as safe as you are useful. The emotional framework you were given. Loyalty equals loyalty. Give and you shall receive collapses under this. You realize you weren't navigating relationships. You were participating in exchanges, and most of them were weighted in the other person's favor. This is where most men stall. They try to return to the illusion, to fix it from within. They apologize more, give more, show up harder. They think if they just prove themselves enough, someone will finally value them without needing to win something from them. But it never works. Because once you've been measured, they don't forget the scale. Machiavelli never encouraged trust. He encouraged positioning. He understood the system for what it was, a negotiation of power cloaked in human warmth. And when that cloak fell, he didn't panic. He recalculated. He recognized the central truth. The world does not organize itself around fairness. It organizes around leverage. It doesn't care how good you are, only how much control you have over perception, access, or outcomes. That's what moves people, not gratitude, not history, but pressure, influence, consequence. Now, this doesn't mean you withdraw completely. That's another trap. The stoic recluse who cuts all ties, pretends not to care, becomes just another version of the naive idealist, one who overreacts instead of adjusting. No, the Machiavellian response is not to retreat. It's to restructure. You stop expecting people to be loyal. You start observing how long they stay useful to you, and you to them. You stop over-investing in emotion and start calculating what each dynamic actually yields. Not in a cold, robotic way, but in a strategic one. There's a reason Machiavelli wrote for princes, not for peasants, not for the emotionally overwhelmed, for those who could manage power while appearing disarmed. He knew control wasn't about domination. It was about understanding what governs others and never letting that knowledge go unused. He called it virtue, not in the moral sense, but in the sense of capability. The ability to influence outcomes in an unpredictable world. The man who has virtue doesn't hope to be treated well. He structures his presence so that mistreating him comes with a cost. You want to stop being betrayed? Then stop offering yourself without conditions. Stop being readable. Stop showing your full intent in every interaction. Because the moment people can predict you, they can plan around you. Here's the part no one tells you. When people know what you want, they start designing how you'll fail. They turn your openness into a roadmap. Not because they're evil, because they're human. Because in environments of scarcity, emotional, social, or economic, leverage is survival. And that means information is a weapon. So Machiavelli offered a shift. From transparency to opacity. From faith and loyalty to control over visibility. From belief in unconditional relationships to a mastery of conditional perception. You don't need to reveal what you feel. You need to manage what others think you're capable of. The man who walks into a room and needs nothing, demands nothing, says little, he's not weak. He's dangerous. Because no one knows what would happen if they crossed him. That's not intimidation. That's ambiguity. That's what Machiavelli built entire republics on. You may not be a prince. You may not rule cities or armies. But you rule something, your time, your presence, your attention. Start treating it like a resource, not a default setting. Stop offering it freely. Start making it part of the negotiation. And if you've lost friends for doing that, ask yourself, were they really friends? Or were they just maintaining a contract you didn't know you signed? When Machiavelli looked at society, he didn't see villains and victims. He saw players and pieces. If you don't understand the board, you're not playing. You're being moved. So what happens next? When the illusion is dismantled, when trust is reclassified as exposure, when you've accepted that your downfall wasn't betrayal, it was miscalculation. This is the part most people don't reach. They either regress into bitterness, or they retreat into cynicism. They call it protecting their peace, but really, they've just resigned. They opt out of the game while pretending they've risen above it. That's not strategy. That's surrender in costume. Machiavelli had no interest in emotional comfort. He wasn't offering healing. He was offering leverage. He understood that power wasn't reserved for kings. Power was wherever perception could be directed, wherever decisions were made under the influence of fear, desire, or uncertainty. So, here's where the reconstruction begins, not in philosophy as abstraction, but in function. Start with this. If people are governed by self-interest, stop pretending they're not. Use it. Anticipate it. Reverse engineer their behavior by asking not what they believe, but what they fear losing. Most men try to influence others by explaining themselves. They believe understanding leads to loyalty, but explanation is always downstream from status. If you have to explain, you're already beneath the person you're trying to persuade. Machiavelli would have called that poor optics. The stronger position is not to be understood. It's to be unpredictable. Unpredictability is not chaos. It's calculated inconsistency. It makes others hesitate. And hesitation buys you time to maneuver, to reposition, to let their assumptions work against them. Every powerful figure in history weaponized uncertainty. From Roman senators to corporate CEOs, the pattern is the same. Don't let them map you. The second mechanism Machiavelli outlined was the illusion of choice. He knew people hate being ruled, but they'll tolerate being guided if they think it was their idea. So don't tell people what to do. Limit the options in advance and make your preferred path the only viable one. It's not deception. It's architecture. The third mechanism is presence management. Not charisma, not likability, but the calculated construction of what you represent. The biggest mistake most people make is trying to be consistent. In reality, consistency makes you predictable. Predictability makes you controllable. Instead, maintain a curated ambiguity. Appear open without being readable. Appear flexible without being accessible. Let people think they understand you, then shift. Machiavelli saw this in nature. The lion commands fear, but the fox avoids traps. Power isn't about being one or the other. It's about knowing when to switch. This means discarding the naive morality you were raised with. That's not the same as becoming immoral. It means replacing the fantasy of universal goodwill with a pragmatic ethics. What works, what maintains control, what minimizes exposure and maximizes optionality. And here's a tactical shift most miss. Don't confront your enemies directly. Don't expose your resistance. That reveals your hand. Instead, redirect their force into outcomes that don't damage you. Machiavelli preferred containment over conflict. He would let an enemy believe they'd won, only to isolate them from the inside. That's not submission. That's engineering defeat. This applies everywhere: relationships, business, social standing. You don't need revenge. You need structural insulation. You need the system to correct them without you lifting a finger. The fourth mechanism is loyalty through dependency. People respect what they rely on, not what they admire, not what they like, what they cannot replace. So create asymmetries. Make your value structural, not just emotional, not just moral, functional. Be the one whose absence creates failure. The world rewards indispensability, not goodness. Most men overinvest emotionally, underinvest strategically. They offer affection before positioning. That's how they lose. Machiavelli would have inverted the order: earn influence, then decide if they deserve your loyalty. If you flip it, you become the beggar asking for behavior you can't enforce. This is where Machiavelli's real message lives. Not in manipulation, but in design. Systems over sentiments. Leverage over longing. And above all, presence over pleading. He saw the game for what it was, not cruel, but indifferent. Not rigged, but responsive. And in that clarity, he offered the one thing most thinkers couldn't: a framework not just to endure the world, but to shape it. You've already lost the illusion. That part's done. What you build now, how you are seen, how you are approached, how your absence is feared, that's no longer fate. That's engineering. Now that you've seen it, not in theory, but in structure, you can unsee it. The smiles weren't promises. They were placeholders. The loyalty wasn't permanent. It was conditional. The friendships weren't built on mutual care. They were held together by mutual gain. And the most disturbing part? It worked. It kept the illusion alive long enough to be believable. Long enough for you to invest. Long enough for you to hand over leverage without noticing the exchange. You didn't lose because you were weak. You lost because you misread the map. You thought you were navigating loyalty when you were standing inside a negotiation. This is where most people close the book. They get the message, they nod, and they go back. They adjust their tone, maybe change their posture, maybe withdraw for a while. But the framework remains untouched. The same belief system, just dressed in darker clothing. They never actually apply Machiavelli. Because applying him means discarding something most people can't live without, the need to be seen as good. Not good in action, good in perception. You were raised to equate goodness with safety, to believe that if you just remain open, honest, emotionally available, someone will protect you. Machiavelli dismantled that belief by showing how often it is exploited, not maliciously, but mechanically. A good man is predictable. A predictable man is manageable. You want safety? Don't be liked. Be calculated. You want respect? Don't be open. Be unreadable. You want real power? Don't chase affection. Make absence cost something. These are not maxims for aggression. They are protocols for survival. In a world where even affection has an expiration date, clarity is not a luxury, it's a weapon. So you're not left with comfort. You're left with questions. What kind of man are you when you stop performing for acceptance? How much of your pain came from treating strategic environments as sacred spaces? What does it look like to restructure your life not around who likes you, but around who needs you? This is what Machiavelli understood. That power is not about force. It's about structure. And if you keep placing your emotional identity into systems designed to extract, you will keep experiencing collapse and calling it betrayal. It's not betrayal. It's the system working exactly as it was designed. And now, so must you. Don't try to fix the illusion. It isn't broken. It was never meant to last. But you can still move differently. You can rebuild your presence. You can become the kind of man they stop testing, not because you threaten them, but because they can't read you. You can become the anomaly they don't want to gamble against. And when that happens, something strange occurs. The loyalty returns. The respect increases. The same people who once dismissed you orbit again, not because they love you, but because now they fear miscalculating you. That's not bitterness. That's control. Now, here's the question I want you to answer below. What's one relationship in your life that only lasted as long as you were useful, and how did you realize it? Don't name them. Don't vent. Describe the mechanism. Because the faster we start recognizing the system, the faster we stop bleeding in it.